articles are intended solely for the use of the United Press Association's 220 East 42nd Street, New York City. Delivery can probably be arranged through the Los Angeles office of the UP. The views expressed in these articles are not necessarily those of this broadcasting station. We are merely granting our facilities to the United Press, and the articles may not be used by other parties. All three of the stories for this evening have been written by Carl, K-A-R-L, Eskelund, E-S-K-E-L-U-N-D, United Press staff correspondent, and all of the stories originate in Kunming, K-U-N-M-I-N-G, Yunnan, Y-U-N-N-A-N. They have been sent to Chungking for transmission at this time. The first story, Travel in China is Still Uncomfortable, by Carl Eskelund, United Press staff correspondent, Kunming, Yunnan, February 11th, UP. Although the dusty roads of free China today carry 4 times the weight of traffic carried when this writer crossed China by truck in 1939, the discomfort and excitement of the trip have not diminished, even in areas where Chinese and foreign engineers have straightened out and repaired the highways. Dozens of wrecked trucks garnish dangerous curves on the entire stretch of highway that runs from the rich province of Chungking, C-H-E-K-I-A-N-G, south of Shanghai, across the rolling plains of central China, and through the mountainous provinces of the southwest, down to Burma. It is a common sight for trucks to be stalled on the highway with the drivers working on a virtually dismantled engine. Frequently, weeks pass before repairs can be completed, if at all. If the trucks cannot be repaired and they are privately owned, the drivers open a second-hand automobile shop on the spot and remain there until they have sold every part of the vehicle that other drivers are willing to buy. When springs break, the Chinese drivers tie them together with strings or steel wire. The horns often do not work, but the drivers enjoy beating against the bonnet with a stick and whooping like red Indians when they roar through a village or pass other trucks. When pedestrians fail to heed the warnings, the drivers lean out of the window and, in a good-natured manner, spit at the pedestrians with amazing accuracy. The pedestrians usually reply by hurling stones after the trucks. Although the trucks should carry only 3 tons, most of them are loaded with 4 or 5 tons, and also carry from 4 to 15 passengers each. 4 of the passengers sit in front, thus making it almost impossible for the drivers to move their arms, while the remaining passengers sit on top of the trucks or in the rear. Most of the gasoline used in free China resembles diluted mud, and quite frequently is mixed with alcohol. In some remote parts of the country, a 5-gallon tin of gasoline costs $500, or about 25 United States dollars. Due to the high cost of gasoline, and because the Burma road may be cut by the Japanese, thousands of trucks are now being built into charcoal burners. These trucks have a low power output, which makes them difficult to use in mountainous country, but they are excellent for flat country. Experts believe the majority of China's trucks can be changed into charcoal burners without much difficulty. Buses in free China are usually ordinary 3-ton trucks, which have been transformed through addition of a roof and seats. Such a bus carries 20 passengers in the rear and 2 in front, next to the driver, plus tons of baggage carried on the roof. The seats are merely wooden boards, but this makes little difference since the passengers spend most of their time in the air, midway between the seats and the ceiling, because of the rough road. In central and western China, the highway winds across wild mountain ranges at an altitude of several thousand feet. Everything is hidden in clouds of vapor, which turn the road into a slimy track with the mud a foot deep. At the bottom of the yawning ravine, one can easily see the remnants of wrecked trucks. Mountain peasants walk slowly beside the road, pushing their mules and oxen. Dusty soldiers march along by the thousands, en route to fronts in various parts of China. Junior officers march with them, but officers of higher rank ride horses, bicycles, motorbikes, or staff cars according to their importance. Huge army trucks carrying light artillery roar by in thick clouds of red dust. These trucks have difficulty passing narrow corners where the road skirts the deep ravines. Truck drivers consider themselves unlucky to get behind one of the heavy military trucks. Hours usually pass before the highway broadens enough to let the faster trucks go by, and sometimes the army truck drivers nonchalantly forget to give up the right of way. In the meantime, passengers are covered by pounds of dust from the offending vehicle. The wild mountain regions are still inhabited by tribes which refuse to recognize any law but that of might. Few people travel unarmed on the mountain roads, and no one dares drive by night without a heavy guard, because often these robbers kill their victims before making away with the loot. The Chinese government, however, has to a great extent succeeded in driving the robbers away from the highways, and hold-ups are now infrequent. The main highways have been improved greatly since 1939. Sharp curves have been straightened, steep hills have been smoothed out, and the highways generally broadened. Some sections of the Chungking highway, the most important communication line in free China, are now twice as wide as they were 3 years ago. When I covered this highway in 1939, the truck had to be ferried across 4 rivers. Today, there are bridges everywhere. At most of the crossings, there are reserve pontoon bridges, which ensure the continuation of traffic despite Japanese bombing attacks on the larger bridges. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese, many of them women and children, are constantly repairing and rebuilding the highways, using their bare hands. Many of China's vital communication lines have already been cut by the Japanese, but the patient Chinese have built new ones. Perhaps the Burma Road will be cut, but by that time, the trucks of China may be roaring along a new highway. That is the end of the first article. The second article, China still utilizes smuggling routes, by Carl Eskelund, United Press Staff Correspondent, Kunming, Yan'an, February 11th, UK. Enormous quantities of goods are being smuggled from the Japanese-occupied cities along the China coast into free China. This writer escaped from Shanghai in a smuggler's boat, carrying contraband to free China, shortly after outbreak of the Pacific conflict. The occupied territories supply unoccupied area along the coast with virtually all of their industrial goods, and daring smugglers make small fortunes by running contraband through the lands. Thousands of tons of iron and steel are smuggled into free China each month from occupied coastal cities. There are instances where heavy machinery, which had to be carried by several men, was smuggled through the Japanese lines on moonless nights. Gasoline used in the unoccupied provinces along the coast is usually smuggled in from the Japanese districts. Even after outbreak of the Pacific War, the Chinese succeeded in smuggling large quantities of gasoline into free China. Although China's most important salt districts along the coast have been occupied by the Japanese, the Chinese succeed in smuggling almost half of the salt output into free China. One of the most important products smuggled into free China is tobacco. Hundreds of boatloads of cigarettes nightly pass from occupied China into the free areas. Most of free China smokes cigarettes smuggled from the coastal district. A package of 10 cigarettes, which in Shanghai costs 20 Chinese cents, or about 1 American cent, brings $3, or about 15 American cents, when sold in the coastal district of Free China. These same cigarettes cost $7, or 35 American cents in West China. The cigarette smuggling is done mostly by women. They slip into the Japanese-occupied districts without much trouble. After purchasing the cigarettes, they stuff them into sacks and cross the lines at night, usually aboard sampans. The job is more dangerous for men, as the Japanese may seize any young Chinese male, accuse him of being a guerrilla, and then execute him. This writer learned of instances where poor farm women earned as much as 500 Chinese dollars, or about 25 United States dollars, on a single trip. The expeditions are not without. The expeditions are not without. The expeditions are not without. The expeditions are not without risks. However, as the sampans are not without risks, however, as the sampans with the smugglers aboard frequently are fired upon by the Japanese. All goods today are cheaper in the coastal districts than anywhere else in Free China, due to the enormous quantities of material which are smuggled past the Japanese. As one travels westward, away from the Japanese-occupied areas, the prices of goods mount. The Japanese know of this blockade running and have tried to stop it, but it takes more men than Nippon can muster to stop the Chinese women who want to make a profit of $500 in a single trip made at night. That is the end of the second article. The third one, British militarists prove popular, by Carl Escalon, United Press staff correspondent, Kunming, Yunnan, February 11, UP. Drivers and mechanics along the main highways of Free China today regularly give the, quote, thumbs up, unquote, sign to foreigners driving past. The thumbs up sign has been used for thousands of years by the Chinese, but the British military mission to China recently popularized it when they showed thumbs up in every town and hamlet through which they passed. The Britishers, most of them husky Australians, were received with enthusiasm everywhere, while most of the Chinese had no idea why the foreigners had come. A few years or even months ago, the Chinese would have shouted, quote, foreign devils, unquote, at these blond men with their funny hats, and children might have thrown stones at them. Although the British and Australian officers could not speak any Chinese, the villagers, quote, talked, unquote, to them through use of sign language whenever they stopped. The Australians were offered tea and oranges everywhere they stopped. Chinese truck drivers and mechanics, most of whom know a few words of pidgin English, carried on long political conversations with the foreigners. The Chinese, however, had difficulty understanding the Australian accent and insisted that the Britishers did not speak proper English. The Chinese, who cheered the Australians as they rode across China, did not know why the Britishers had come to their country. They did not comprehend the strategic importance of Singapore and Burma, where the British were then fighting. But they saw in the arrival of these foreigners one of the first signs of active cooperation between their country and the Western powers, and always they cheered when the arrivals told them that no longer were they fighting alone. That is the end of the third article, being transmitted through the facilities of station XGOY in Chungking to the United Press Associations in America. You have been listening to the Chinese International Broadcasting Station in Chungking. At this time, we continue our program in the North American transmission with recorded music. In approximately 14 minutes,